Zoe, we're all go. Right, if I could just call the meeting back to order. Obviously now we're into our workshop phase, an open session, and we have a presentation from the Waikato Regional Council in respect of their long-term plan consultation. So look, I will pass the speaking paddle, so to speak, over to you, Stu, and to introduce yourself, and I'll leave it for you to take it from there.
Tēnā koe, Susan, Ken, kia ora, kanu te mihi kia koutou. Yeah, look, Stu Kneebone, I think we all know each other. Brent Sinclair is our Director of Resource Use Group, who's with me here today to support. And yeah, we've got a relatively simple LTP. You're all familiar with the process, so we'll just run through some of the key things that I think you'll be interested in. Yeah. Okay. So we've got, these are our strategic priorities that sort of underpin, I guess, the prioritisation of our limited resources that all councils face. So obviously freshwater, biosecurity and biodiversity, coastal and marine, just a refresher that we're responsible for the coastal and marine environment from Mean High Water Springs out to the 12-mile limit. And it's an area that's probably hasn't had the attention that it should have in the past, just because of various other tensions as well. So we've got quite a focus on that one at the moment. And our regional coastal plan is in development at the moment, and the second round of submissions is about to open. Sustainable development and infrastructure, and that's just reflecting the challenges we've got with climate change and that sort of thing on our infrastructure, which is predominantly for us flood protection, drainage and that sort of thing. Obviously community connections that you're all very familiar with, which we'll talk about shortly with public transport, and transitioning to a lower emissions economy, which we're all faced with as well. Yeah, look, just a little bit of a summary page on what I've just been talking about, really, which is all pretty straightforward. I'll keep moving to the good stuff. And you're familiar with the process. Oh gee, I can't read the dates from there, but I'll try on this one. Yeah, so 14th. So the consultation's open from 2nd of April till the 2nd of May. So we're formally adopting our consultation document at our council meeting tomorrow, and the hearings will run from 14th to 17th of May, and then we'll be making a decision 24th, 29th of May with a final approval for 25th of June. So this is just a snapshot of our rates revenue increase from current ratepayers, and acknowledge territorial authorities have quite different challenges to regional councils at the moment, and so this isn't intended to be a comparison to other regional councils and other district councils. It's just here to highlight what we're proposing. So 6% for the first year LTP. These are just averages, and 8% for year 2, and it's 2.5%, I think, for year 3, acknowledging that things might change. And of course, as you well know, predicting out for the remainder of the 10 years is a little bit of an arbitrary process as well. Now targeted rates a little bit different. So we have targeted rates primarily for 3 main areas: catchment management stuff and flood protection, and public transport is the other big one, which we'll talk about as we go forward now. And just I'm more than happy to take questions as we go through, because we've only got sort of 4 key areas, so happy to stop. Just let me know. Yeah. So Philip, yeah. Oh, sorry, Madam.
Yeah,
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Philip.
Thank you. Welcome this morning to both of you. Just go back one screen. The targeted rates there, and for public transport, and then 27, 28 it goes down. Could you just?
I'll get into that when we get to that part of the presentation. So we've got 4 key proposals: increasing our investment in biodiversity and biosecurity, economic development funding, simplifying our public transport investment, and the way in which we fund our engagement with the ag sector, basically, which we'll get into in a bit more detail shortly. So this is a real key one for us. Our natural heritage rate is the rate that funds the way that we help the community with working with us, and that's both individuals and groups and collectives, to pull down a bit towards improving and maintaining biodiversity. And just as an example, our contribution to the Maunga Tautari Sanctuary Mountain Project is funded from our natural heritage rate. We also have two more smaller funds as well, where we fund smaller groups and individuals with biodiversity enhancement projects. So that's been, I think, about something like $6 a year for quite a long time now, and we haven't been increasing it in line with inflation. So we've got three proposals or three options on the table. Our preferred option is to bring it up as if we'd been maintaining it and increases with inflation every year, which would take it up to $8.68 per property. Option two, I'm sure I've got it here, yeah, is to increase it to $15 per property, which is sort of, I guess, I wouldn't call it gold plated, but another option on top of the inflation only one. Or obviously option three is keep it at $5.80, which so our focus is on option one, but we're really open to feedback from yourselves on whether you think which option we should target. We've found with those three funds, we have a small scale community initiatives fund, which is up to $5,000. I can't remember the name of the second one. Brent, can you? And another fund which is up to $40,000, and then we have a natural heritage fund, which is a big one for the likes of projects like Sanctuary Mountain. And we've found that demand for us to help individuals and groups in the community with this stuff is just exceeding our available funds, hence this proposal to increase it. Public transport, and you'll all be pretty familiar with this. So as you well know, some of our public transport is funded by the district councils, and others is funded by ourselves. And I think Waipa here, you guys fund it and pass it over to us, I think. Same in Hamilton City, a couple of other districts. We've started to make some changes in the past LTP, where we've been rating, I think, in Coromandel and Hauraki and Matamata Piako. What we'd like to do is bring it all under one roof, so that, and I think you'll be familiar with this proposal, so that the regional council funds a whole lot, which just makes it a whole heap easier for planning. So administration and that sort of thing. So I'll be really interested in your feedback on what you think about this as well. Not sure what else now. Sorry.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, Claire and then Liz.
Yeah, thanks, Ju. So, you know, the new land transport, GPS has just been released, the draft. And so
I don't have many questions because I'm not fully familiar with that.
well, I suppose my question is, were your costings made on the assumption that central government's existing subsidies or shared costs, share of funding would continue? Because they're pretty clear in that new GPS that they want any public transport services to not for them to increase their share, and to expect the fares from the services to actually pay for the services. Yeah, and I didn't know whether or not that's going to affect your proposals, because I thought the idea was to increase the services and the coverage, but that might have been on the assumption that you would get an increased share from central government.
So my understanding is we're working on the existing funding mechanism, which I think is 51% from memory, and bearing in mind that Te Huia the train is on a 75, I think, as well, and there's obviously quite a bit of uncertainty around that as well. So, look, in terms of, so that's my understanding of how we've based it. What it looks like going forward, I think we're all in that problem.
Yes, so kia ora everybody. Yeah, so the existing things, my transport director, Phil mentioned, to say thanks for the support that this district is providing in relation to the land in particular as we look to electrify part of the fleet, and you'll be obviously seeing more services, a pretty significant uplift in services pretty soon actually. I think from the 15th of April there's going to be a significant uplift in services between Cambridge and Tolmutu and Hamilton, so that'll be great for the community out here. All the budgets have been based on what we knew at the time. A lot of the things are lined up ahead, but as you say, the long-term future is a little bit of a question mark. So we're looking pretty closely at the GPS and we'll be taking advice back to our council if there's anything in there that suggests that we might need to have changes through, effectively that will come through the CE submission to the LTP. The big thing really on the radar is Te Huia. Yeah.
Just noting that with Te Huia, there's no funding increases proposed in the next 3 years, but post then there's some obviously got to upgrade the carriages and the trains and that sort of thing. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. As I said, yeah,
Thanks,
Yeah.
Liz.
Thank you. Hey, look, great to see you guys here. Really appreciate that. Public transport, so really happy with the direction it looks like we're going in. We're going to see some increased services and an expansion of some of the areas that we go to. So wrapped with the direction that I see, Regional Council going in with Waipa, I think it's good. The Hamilton Airport service that has recently concluded, I understand that there's an opportunity that those flex service minivans that were used for that service will be available, and I understand Regional Council staff are looking at where they might be utilised. Do you think, Shu, that we could be putting up a really good case for those minibuses to come to Cambridge or Taumutu, preferably Cambridge, to provide a flex service for Cambridge residents? Because one thing we're still lacking, of course, is that internal public transport within what is, for Cambridge anyway, becoming a fast-growing town. So I'm just wondering if you are happy to advocate on our behalf for that service, or for those vans that are probably potentially being used somewhere else in Hamilton, but to come out to the rural areas.
Yeah, no, look, I'd be really happy to, Liz. I've been to the airport 3 times in the last fortnight to pick my wife up, and it's for the population we've got here, we need a better service, yeah, and even the same from even Hamilton itself. I think the only option at the moment without this flex service is a taxi, which is obviously pretty cost prohibitive as well. So yeah, no, answer is yes.
Yeah. So what we're looking for really is a flex service within Cambridge, if we can get our residents from A to B. Hey, now we have another councillor as well from Regional Council. Where's he?
No.
Haven't met him, haven't seen him, been a year and a half. Yeah. Really great to see that other councillor around this table. So I'm just sort of questioning, seem to have a bit of a lacking of engagement there. So look, thanks, Stu, for you fronting up to us today. Really appreciate it.
Can I just make a quick comment? I should have said at the beginning. Pamela was hoping to be here. She texted me just this morning as I was driving down just to pass on her apologies. She has been hoping to get to all of these. Obviously, something else has come up that's pretty important, because she does see these things as these opportunities to connect as really important. So Pamela passes her apologies.
So in terms of the Regional Council taking over the funding, simplifying the way in which we fund public transport, one of our key decisions is how we spread that rate burden. And those 2 options kind of summarise it at a relatively high level. Our preferred option is option 1, where we would fund 80% of the cost. This is the non-fare component of the cost from properties that are within a 5K radius of the bus route, and the other 20% would come from all other properties in the region. And the rationale for that is based on the fact that every person that gets onto a bus effectively takes another car off the road, which makes it frees the road up for the rest of us. And trying to get back into Cambridge at 4:00 in the afternoon, I'd have to be honest, in my personal view is I think that's the way we should be going, but we've got those two options up there. So would be really interested in your feedback on that one as well. Look, it's probably a bit challenging for those that don't utilise the buses or aren't in a position to utilise the buses because of where they live to accept. But I do think we have to look at it in terms of what the environment's going to look like going forward.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So Mark Tamura came and presented to us about something similar, didn't he? And I challenged him around the funding requirement in terms of the surrounding properties outside of that subject area, and
out
it's
of the 5K area,
and it's connected to property value, which struck me as being a pretty flawed kind of way to measure somebody's commitment, because in fairness, the further out the properties go, the less likely you are to use the service.
Sure.
And quite naturally, you think of rural areas, they're going to have a reasonably high capital value by the nature of their properties being farms often. And it seems sort of almost unfair to unduly burden them with the cost for a service they'll never use simply because of the capital value of land. And if it's premised on people's ability to pay, you're making a sweeping statement around the state of agriculture, I guess, is for want of a better word. And I guess I'm just hearing, kind of reflecting on yesterday's infrastructure conference that Liz and I attended, and it seems to be a really strong call for a focus and an emphasis on user pays. So I just putting that out there, expressed my level of dis-ease to Mark, and I just found the rationale slightly flawed personally.
Now, look,
And just reflecting that some of the comments that were made, but that's not to poo-hoo the notion of there being a greater public good by people adopting the use of public transport. I'm not saying that, but I'm just sort of reflecting on it being really another land tax for I can hear my farmer mates all saying, this is ridiculous. I haven't used a bus since I went to school.
now look, completely valid comments, Susan, and as I said, there's a real tension there. Every person gets on a bus, takes another car off the road, which does make it easier for me as a farmer to get into town as well. So I don't. It's like a lot of rating mechanisms. There is no easy answer, and there's no completely fair answer. But look, we'd appreciate your considered feedback on this one, whatever that may be. And just FYI, I'm a strong supporter in the concept of a park and ride type facility and with Hotep or wherever it's going to be, because I think that'll encourage more people that commute between. I mean, where I live in Whitehall, there's a lot of people live out there that work in Hamilton, that currently all drive, and I think we should be working towards getting them onto buses over time as well, which currently there's enough room to park in Cambridge, but I don't think there will be going forward. Yeah.
A fair observation. Monty.
Sorry, can I just follow your comment, Susan? Stu, is the option one your preferred option? Is particularly the 20% going to be rated proportional to capital value, or is it going to be a per rating unit kind of charge?
My understanding is a percentage of CV, Brent, I think. Yeah. Otherwise it would be down there as a UAGC, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just getting clarity on that. Is there any reason why it couldn't be a per rating unit? Is there any technical reason why not?
I think the short answer to your question is not a technical reason, but I'm hearing the message, and I'll take this back to Phil King, who's our Transport Director, to ask whether or not it's a matter that it's being in the mix, because it might be something that's, as Stu says, something useful to raise, and then for our council to then get advice from Stu around the equity of the different rating models, because all rating models have different equities.
I'm just looking at Liz, who's been on the PT committee more than I have, but I don't think we use UAGCs for any of our PT funding, do we? Even Hamilton City don't do that, I don't think, do they?
Look, I think this is, I think at the moment, we're just still looking for feedback.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll probably just leave it there really, you know, if it's deemed not fair, if you've got a better idea, submit to the process and yeah, let's come up with a system that we're all happy with.
Yeah, I think that was something that we covered with Mark Tamura when he's here. And we did suggest that perhaps it should be a SUIP based apportioning, but yeah, he did claim that it was affordability was the issue.
Okay.
Ken.
Yeah, through your worship, the only thing of a technical nature that might prevent it being on a uniform basis is, of course, there is a cap on the amount of rates that can be collected on a uniform basis. But I don't have insight into Waikato Regional's rating situation to know whether that's a problem.
Yeah, I think as a regional council, we're well within the safety limits of that cap, so that probably wouldn't be a constraint, I don't think, but.
Cool. Yeah.
Can I just close that off then? Just your argument, which I basically buy, that even me living miles out of town, I do benefit from people being on a bus.
That it's argument, how you measure that benefit.
Yeah, but that argument is a lot easier to run if the public transport component's being funded per rating unit rather than capital value, because that becomes a pretty sort of hard argument to run from an equity point of view to a farmer who lives a long way out of town.
Yeah. And look, it's an interesting conversation. There was a good article in the paper the other day about the Te Huia subsidy, and the Te Huia is actually funded per passenger less than what most of the Auckland Rail stuff is. And then when you look at the subsidies that go into national roads, there's significance as well. And quite where that balance is, it's hard to know. Okay. So regional economic development funding. So back in 2015, the Regional Council of the day created a Regional Economic Development Fund. And that was kind of on the back of the contribution of the Regional Council that was made to the Velodrome. That was the first time a regional council in the country had funded a similar sort of project like that. And it was about also sending a signal to Wellington that we were, as a region, were prepared to be in the game in terms of joint partnerships with the likes of central government to fund projects that were of regional significance. So we created this fund. We've only had 3 grants approved in the 8 years that it's been in existence. And we haven't had the demand and the interest in that fund that we anticipated. And we've had a number of projects that we've sort of been really unsure about. Hence, we've got a proposal to disestablish that fund. It was there's the nearly $4 million sitting there that we've collected. So the fund has come about as from returns from the Regional Council's investment fund. So just as a refresher, the Regional Council has an investment fund that came about when the regional councils were created in 1989. They were vested shares in the ports of Tauranga and the ports of Auckland, and across the country, the various other ports in the different regional council areas. And the Waikato Regional Council back in the day chose, rightly or wrongly, to sell those shares, and hence that investment fund was created. So that's one of the proposals there. So yeah, option 1 is we discontinue it, and option 2 is we continue to operate it. If we were, so our preferred option is option 1. If we were to continue with it, we'd have to probably take a serious look at how we manage that going forward.
Can I just interrupt there? Oh, that's what I wanted to see. What were you planning on doing with the funds should you choose to establish?
Yeah, so this is only part of it. So we've been funding Te Waka from excess returns from our investment fund, and we're proposing that we've been funding them for $750,000 per year, $750K for the past 3 years. The Waikato or Te Waka, the Waikato RDF is one of the, I guess, the smaller RDFs in the country in terms of funding that they have, as we understand it. So we consider that our councils come to a position where we'd like to keep funding them, but we'd fund them from the return, I guess the residual from the RDF. That if we chose to discontinue that. using those unallocated funds. Our council thinks that it's important we have an RDF in the region. Again, would be really interested in feedback from this council on the value they see in that in Te Waka. Yeah.
Leah.
Yeah, just on the value that we get from Te Waka, it's really difficult to put our finger on it. A lot of the stuff they do is, I suppose, economic commentary and indicators across the district or region. They do, they seem to run training sessions and meetups and things like that, but how that gets translated into, I suppose, new jobs, and perhaps some of the stuff they're doing is actually also catered for in other areas. You know, why would it need to be funded, you know, by the regional council? Yeah, it's really difficult to demonstrate a clear line of sight between their activities and actually improving economic development or outcomes for us.
No, look, I don't disagree. And look, our council has had some really robust discussions on this very issue in the past couple of months. And we've talked about different mechanisms that we could use to fund them, including targeted rates on businesses was one that came up. And then, you have to question, well, is it only businesses that benefit from it? It's a real hard one. For me personally, just putting my personal hat on, I'm not so sure either, but I think, well, it's a fairly small amount compared to what other RDFs get around the country. So I'm sort of okay with it, but yeah, could I hand on heart say that I could tangibly describe the benefits? You're quite right. Yeah.
So the conversation is very much the conversation that happened in our council chamber. And so the councillors have noted that funding would be contingent on Te Waka meeting accountability measures. The challenges I think you've just identified is identifying those accountability measures that are really measurable. Yeah.
It's a challenge. Liz.
Yeah, look, and I think that there have been other councillors around the Waikato who've probably signalled that there may be a decreased level of funding going to Te Waka as well. But look, everyone's going through their processes and consultations, so we want to see what happens. I absolutely echo what Claire has said. The bottom point you've got there, which is the new accountability measures. So I'm really interested to see how you go with those and what those might be. And I think that may help us as well with some of our decision making. So anything you want to share along those lines would be helpful. Which direction or what is your thinking around that?
Yeah, okay, no, that's good. And I think, it's like a few other things we do. It would be potentially come quite fragmented if Te Waka was to be funded from all of the district councils in the region. Hence, the regional council is quite happy to step up and do that on behalf of the region. But I do think we probably need to know that a majority of the TAs are in support of us doing that as well. So yeah, so no, more than happy to communicate with what that accountability framework looks like, and there may well be potential for Te Waka to perhaps have a region-wide engagement as well at different times. Yeah. What have I done wrong? It's gone in stop mode.
Has it gone to sleep?
Working perfectly before.
Sorry. Oh, cool.
Oh yeah. Okay. Look, I'll hand over to Brent to talk about this one because this has come out of his directorate. He's more articulate than I am on this.
Background to this is the regional plan contains some 70 odd permitted activities. And so previous councils put in place a rating mechanism to be able to have proactive monitoring of permitted activities. Because as you'll appreciate, they still come with a number of conditions that just, I guess I describe them often as a free resource consent. And so the council historically has funded that from all properties over 2 hectares, which has meant a rate of around $70 for every property over 2 hectares. The practical reality today and going forward is the very large majority of that work is focused on properties that are over 20 hectares. You'll see in Plan Change 1, the threshold for permissive farm planning is 20 hectares. The national environmental, so the regulations around farm planning coming from government are around 20 hectares and above. And so the vast majority of the work will be more focused on properties above 20 hectares. So the council considered whether or not it was equitable to be still having the permitted activity rate go to those properties between 2 and 20 hectares, and decided that they didn't consider that was the most equitable funding. And so this change will result in a reduction in rates to properties between 2 and 20 hectares. And then the costs shared around those properties that over 20 hectares. So it's really just an opportunity for the council to look at an historic rating mechanism to decide whether or not it's the most equitable funding mechanism given where the work's undertaken. So that's in the proactive permitted activity monitoring space. Then in the farm plan implementation space, there's a lot of work that's being done in the rural community, funded from the general rate right now for the provision of farm plans, both under the national regulations and under Plan Change 1. That's being funded by the general rate for a number of years. The council have looked to see whether or not that is equitable going forward. And so they have decided that it would be more equitable for that to be shared. And so still that there is a public good element in having a thriving rural economy with good farm plans, and that is a public good element to that. And so they've said 50% of it would still be funded from the general rate, but 50% of it would move across to this targeted rate. And the councillors over time believe that general rate contribution would reduce over time to 20% over the 10 years of the plan. So effectively it creates a new title of a rate to provide an opportunity for the council to move some funding off of the general rate into a targeted rate where they think that's more appropriately shared. So that's the summary.
Monty.
Just the first point, the permitted activity monitoring. How big a change is the taking the 2 to 20 hectares out? You said that it was currently sitting at about 70 hectares per, I'll call it farm.
Yes, so currently it's about $70 per property that's over 2 hectares, and it'll go up by about $110, something like that, because basically there are 25,000 properties that currently get it. 14,000 of them are under 20 hectares. So those 14,000 properties will be saying thank you because they will get that $70 reduction. And then the funds that were coming from those properties will go on to the over 20 hectares, which is about 11,000 of those properties.
Yeah, cool. Any other questions? No.
This is just a bit of a snapshot of some of the other work that we're prioritising. And I think, yeah, some of it's, not all of it's in our patch, but a whole bunch of stuff there. Oh, sorry, Claire.
Claire.
I was interested in the coastal marine areas because I understand that there's quite a drive, particularly around the Hauraki Gulf. You know, like there's a proposal, I suppose, for legislation to, I suppose, step up the protection levels of the Hauraki Gulf. And so I understood that one of your proposals is to fund a coastal marine enforcement officer or inspection officer or something, just to make sure, because like the proposal in that legislation I just referred to is that there would be marine sanctuaries or marine protection areas, and that means, you know, they had to be monitored. Yeah, and so is that one of the things that you are consulting on?
So in the coastal marine space, the main increase in expenditure in that space is around monitoring and understanding what's happening within the in that area. And so I think the council has recognised that over the years there's probably been a lot more investment in understanding what's happening in the terrestrial space rather than the coastal marine space, and so they're looking to invest more funding. And part of that is then working with partners around how you can join in with people like NIWA and others to be able to understand. Because as you did right, the Firth is under quite a lot of pressure. A lot of that pressure is coming from land-based activities. And so if we're going to be putting in place planning frameworks which are going to be looking to address those issues, you need good scientific evidence base to be able to inform that policy framework. And so yeah, there's some further investment in information gathering.
And just as a general rule too, so I think it's Ministry of Fisheries is responsible for fish stocks and fishing quotas and things like that. Our area of responsibility is with marine biodiversity and that sort of thing.
That's the area that I was keen on. And I would also appreciate understanding the peat question. Is there any information you could share on what you think you might be doing in that space?
So again, that's a significant piece of work which is around information to be able to support policy development. So as councillors, we're same, we've got Pete in the Waipa Arohi as well as up in the Hauraki, but there's some pretty significant challenges around what's happening with peat shrinkage, which impacts on flooding and drainage. And so it's really important to get good data that can then support what is our sustainable infrastructure strategy around making sure that we have the right investment in the right location, having a view which is looking ahead the 10, 20, 30, 50 years that we need to look. And so there's a little bit of a gap in knowledge around what's happening with that peat subsidence in the Hauraki. And so there's funding that is being sought to be able to fill that information gap.
Thanks, Claire. Lou and then Marcus.
Yeah, thank you, Stu. Good to see you again. Over the years. I sat at Regional Council on Monday, sitting there with the Civil Defence, and we are actually looking at quite a increase in our costs and what we have to as infrastructure. And that will go on the UGHC, won't it? Because we actually go through you as a joint committee. The problem we've got is that the government has actually recognised through the Mike Bush report that we have a lack of infrastructure and knowledge, and we're going to have to train people a lot more. And I just wonder, when you said other work we're prioritising, that is a very, very important issue, and possibly needs to be onto that list at some point in the time, because civil defence is something that we can't escape, and we need to commit and have the ability to react. Okay, we've been lucky in our area up to date, but an earthquake or something like that could impact us all. I just wondered whether you should actually include that in there.
I'll just check with Brent. I think it's kind of in there under that, partially under that regional spatial planning title as well, which is about us all. Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point.
Yeah, so the recommendation from the key coming through around additional funding is in the, it's not been highlighted, but it's one of those things where effectively we, as you say, we are the delivery agent of the recommendations that come through from the key. It is something that we were discussing yesterday around, does the Bush report provide anything that says that needs to be revisited? Because obviously the KEG will be then no doubt potentially through the submission process to the LTP looking at the Bush report and saying, hey, the things that we said we might need, we think we might need something different than that. And so sounds like you're on the KEG, so we'll look forward to that feedback as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brent. Marcus.
Yeah, it's really good seeing that you're prioritising peat lakes and peat work, and also you're stepping up the pest management. Just can you go one slide back to what you're not working on? Oh, well, sorry, or was it one slide forward that we saw?
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, why are you withdrawing the eco retrofit in bits and pieces? Yep. And how come? Have you done any working with like Waipa networks and stuff about healthy homes and
So this was a little project that I think I spoke to you about a couple of years ago, where we were going to provide, I guess, funding opportunities for people, effectively loans for houses that wanted to eco retrofit using the that local government credit scheme, whatever they call it. And we ran into a bit of a roadblock with the we'll call it the Credit Contracts and Consumer Finance Act, which categorised would have categorised us as a lender, I think, and put a whole bunch of constraints on us. And so our regional council and a whole bunch of other councils around the country lobbied the minister, and we sort of got over that hurdle, to summarise. But evidently, as I understand it, banks are now offering credit at the same rates as we could have provided it for exactly the same thing. So that's the reason we've pulled back from it. Yeah, simple as that.
Dale Marie, and I'll come on after that.
Tēnā korua, I tau mai ki roto ki tēnei whare. Just a quick one, just because I'm listening about how Hauraki's doing. There is some work going on with Marakopa and places out on the west coast, hopefully. I'm just thinking about our marae that are out there that are terribly getting affected with the erosion and everything that's going out up there. I'm just wondering whether they're included in the catchment zone.
Oh, in terms of catchment management, it's a big part of our program. Yeah,
and just
absolutely.
on the back of what Lou said, knowing that Kathy Shaw, Kathy's done some fantastic work out there in the civil defence on how she's captured 60-something marae in her catchment zone around the resilience measures. So I just thought I'd flag that up, just to let you know whether we're keeping all our dots connected. Tēnā tātou.
Yeah, sure.
Just to develop that one step forward, one of the big conversations we had on Monday was actually the lack of ability to be able, or funds, to actually communicate with local iwi and work, and facilitate. So that is one of the problems that we're actually facing right now.
Cool. Just to that point, Dale-Marie, before I forget, I heard on national radio a report about some research done, and I can't remember which university it's come out of. It's on national radio this morning. I think it was, the number was something like 1/3 of all marae up and down the country are vulnerable to climate change impact one way, shape, or the other. And I hate to butcher the great findings of the researcher, but we should follow that one up and see how our marae and Aotearoa actually sit in that data. So Liz.
Thank you. Hey, a couple of other things that are kind of just on my radar that I just want to make sure that we're sort of covering off. One is the invasive gold clam. So we know that MPI have been working very closely with all the councils on the Waikato River around this. I'm really concerned about what level of funding they might have going forward. Under a new government, I think everything is up in the air right now. So I don't know what that level of funding is going to be, if any. If there's none, someone needs to pick this up, because we've still got, there's lots of, I guess, questions. There's more questions than answers right now around how invasive this gold clam is going to be. So I just want to just make sure that that's on everybody's radar, because whatever happens, there's going to need to be some money invested. And given it's in the Waikato River, I'm guessing it largely falls with you guys.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the announcements of the last few days in terms of staff, potential staff layoffs in MPI, and I note from the media stuff, it's predominantly around biosecurity as well. So I think both from a terrestrial and marine biosecurity perspective, it's something the Regional Council will be taking a real close interest in. I noticed they appear to be putting a lot more work into keeping golden clam out of the Bay of Plenty of Rotorua Lakes district, and it's, I guess, understandably, but that they appear to have accepted that it's here, and we probably can't do much about it, but they're working overtime to make sure it doesn't get into the Rotorua Lakes district. Nonetheless, we still don't have it in Lake Taupo and parts of Upper Waipa, so it's something, and both the River Authority as well, Susan and I are involved with, are pushing pretty hard on that one as well. So
yeah, and I guess I want to acknowledge the response from MPI. It's been, it was a rocky start, but I think it's been pretty good. I've certainly seen a lot of people on the land, advising events, recreational users across across Horohoro and Karapiro domain, making sure that we're not spreading this invasive thing.
Yep.
Hey, the other thing that's on my radar is Hornwort. So there has been an arrangement amongst LINZ, Mercury, Waipa Regional Council for many, many years, where we have all pitched in, and LINZ has always coordinated an annual spray. Sometimes it's twice a year. This is that awful dicot that they put into the river. However, without it, we would not be able to use the waters the way that we do now. I understand that Regional Council was looking to reduce their level of funding or have exited from that partnership. I'd like some more clarity on that, because I'm not quite sure where or who's expected to sort of fund the shortfall.
yeah, look, I remember having a conversation with you about this about a year ago, and I did get some clarity on that, but I'm sorry, it's not forefront of my mind, but happy to chase that one up. And from recollection, it was more around a recreational hazard rather than a biosecurity hazard was, I think, the rationale underpinning us perhaps withdrawing funding, but I'll go back and check on that and get back to you, Liz. Yeah. Cool. So the Regional Council's infrastructure, as I said before, is primarily around flood protection infrastructure. We've got something like 600 plus kilometres of stop banks. Large parts of the Hauraki agricultural area are below sea level at high tide, and we've got climate change and all that sort of thing. So that's quite a big challenge for us going forward. And a lot of the infrastructure in terms of flood pumps and things were put in the days where people weren't concerned about tuna mortality and things like that, which is obviously no longer acceptable. So we've got quite a big infrastructure upgrade process going on, which is really challenging as well. At the moment, the lion's share of the rates burden to fund that infrastructure comes from the farmers in those areas. We don't get any contribution from central government in terms of the rail network, and the state highway network is enabled to operate 365 days a year as a result of that infrastructure that we provide, but we don't get any funding from those organisations, which is something we can, along with other regional councils around the country, we're continually lobbying for, but we don't have a lot of success, but it's an ongoing thing. So we are about to initiate a review of how that infrastructure is funded, but yeah, look, it's an ongoing challenge here, and we do have to accept that there are parts of those areas that may no longer going forward be sustainable to keep farming, but. Yeah, it's all just, this will all be in our consultation document that will come out. So, yeah, so look, I think that's pretty much us, Ms. Susan. Yeah, more than happy to keep engaging over the next few months if you've got any further questions or detailed questions, and we'd really value your feedback on what we're proposing.
Yeah, thanks very much, gentlemen. It's really been a really helpful workshop and conversation. Much appreciate it, and no doubt we'll turn our mind to a submission in the fullness of time. Yeah. So thank you.
No, thank you.
Now, I was going to invite you to stay for morning tea, but I'm going to make an executive decision. We skip morning tea and move on to our next matter because I've got a hard 11 o'clock that I absolutely must get to. So can I invite Kirsty to come and present us her workshop in respect of anchor institutions. Travel safely. Thank you very much, Brent and Stu. Take care. Thank you. Oh, don't leave your bibs and bobs. Cheers. Thank you, Stu. Bye. Kirsty, the floor is yours.
Kia ora koutou. So first of all, just apologies from Gary, who, as you know, is unwell and was due to co-present this with me. So just in terms of the purpose of this session today, it's simply just to do a recap of the key components that we proposed for our anchor institution framework moving forward. You provided feedback at the session that we had at the end of February, and so just to provide an overview of that, and then that leads into the next bullet point 3, which is identifying what work is already underway, what should we be prioritising, and then an opportunity for you to ask questions, discussion, leading into next steps, which will ultimately be the preparation and presentation of a report to come to Council at the end of April. Thank you. So just by way of recap, I think there we outlined the different component parts of the framework. There's a lot of detail that sits below this that has been provided to you previously. And overwhelmingly, we got from you a sense of general support for this, but some feedback around what we focus on, and we'll move into that in the next slide. But any comments or questions in respect of what's presented here?
Look, just quickly, I mean, I think that's really good. I just looked at that employment one, and I just kind of think that's much that's such a big picture, isn't it? What's top of mind for me right now is the increase at Hautapu, really big industrial area, the employment opportunities there. But what we need to see is a kind of a bigger framework around how those organisations are also providing opportunities for local residents. Somehow we need kind of like the Mayor Task Force for, Mayor's Task Force is probably possibly something that we could all be looking at, but I don't want it to fall with just at council level. It feels like that it needs to be much part of a bigger picture, perhaps.
Absolutely. So we'll move to that in the next slide, Councillor Liz. Thank you. So just in terms of feedback from you, as I mentioned, overwhelmingly support, but some concerns in terms of costs that you didn't want to see us incurring significant costs, particularly in our current environment. We were working to budget constraints. There was also feedback that we shouldn't be doing, all things to all people, that we needed to really focus and identify what we were going to prioritise and really stick to our knitting. Looking at linking in, ensuring alignment with the work that's underway in terms of the external comms strategy, customer experience strategy, that overall end user experience, and looking at enhancing our resources in-house, and also acknowledging the importance of our partnerships with Mana Whenua and iwi, and acknowledging that wellbeing focus, particularly in light of what we've seen in response to the change in government in this particular area. Is there anything, I think there was also, Councillor Clare, you'd mentioned your desire for a flagship work stream around housing affordability. So we'll come to that. But is there anything there that anyone has any feedback or comments on?
It's not in there, but it follows on a little bit from what Liz had said from the previous slide. I'm just mindful that council doesn't create jobs. What we do is we enable an environment for other people to create jobs. So I think we need to be really clear that we're about enabling our ratepayers, residents and businesses, rather than we're not creating them. I should be really clear about the distinction. So it's about enablement rather than direct creation, in my view.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Susan. That's a really good point, and does sit below with the detail around that component part on employment. It's around, there are a number of things that are captured within that around making it easy for us to do, or for our community to do business with us in terms of our regulatory controls, ensuring that we can be as enabling as possible. So, yeah, noted. Thank you.
Can I just jump in?
Monty.
Sorry, Kirsty. Yeah, thanks. That shouldn't attempt to be all things to all people, I think might have been my words, and I got somewhat challenged by that over that last time, and I've been reflecting on it since, because obviously the well-beings kind of do encompass all aspects of someone's life. So I don't step back from that, but just the following comment: avoid things that aren't council's responsibility. It's possibly more that we don't want to be a mile wide and an inch deep. We want to be effective where we utilise our resources. So it's maybe not so much avoid doing things that aren't our responsibility, but operate in spaces where we can be effective. I'd probably turn it around to a bit more positive, okay? But I don't step back from the assertion that we shouldn't try and be all things to all people.
Yeah, excellent observation.
Thank you, Councillor Mike. And if we can now just turn to this next slide, which is really, I guess, it's very much about what we're already doing now and how we can enhance that to ensure that we can be most effective, I think, and that really speaks to the point that you've just made. So there's a lot of work that's already underway across our organisation, but this is really about bringing it together within one umbrella framework, much as what we've sort of trying to do in the climate change space. ensuring that we're operating effectively, but also that we're able to identify and measure benefits that are generated within our community, and that these are aligned to our vision and our community outcomes. So the first one there that we're recommending, based on the feedback that we've had from you and work that is already underway, recommending prioritisation for procurement, this component part. So as you're aware, we already have in place a comprehensive procurement strategy and policy. Within that, there is the prioritisation for local spend and or use of the local workforce. There is a component part of that around social procurement. And this Amatai, which connects purchases with Māori and Pacifica business entities. We've also got contracts in place with different organisations with social benefits that are generated from those. As you know, we've done a lot of work in that procurement space around our contracting principles, Section 17A review. So it's really building on that. There is staff training underway and planned also. So we would like to be able to present to you in a draft work program procurement as a priority.
For you, Madam Chair, it sounds like you're already doing it. So I would have thought that we would not prioritise that because we would be looking at new things to be working on. Like, I actually think that we've done pretty well already in the procurement space, and we've got our policies and practices, you know, pretty much, I suppose, done and dusted. But what I think is missing is the reporting of them, with the reporting of what difference it's making, the impact, what we've achieved through having this, these policies. Yeah, because I mean, I always feel that you say that, you know, we're expecting contractors to demonstrate the local content they have in their, either their employees or their bases, their depots and that. And we assume that it's taken into account, but we don't see any specific reporting that, you know, 80% of our contractors now have a certain percentage of local content and things like that. Yeah, and we can then set targets as well, or we can understand why we wouldn't want to go to 100% because there are benefits, you know, in having outsiders, but we need good reporting on it.
Yeah. So through your worship, yeah, look, I'm happy to pick that up. Kirsty, procurement falls in my camp. And yeah, well, I mean, what we've developed up, I mean, obviously we shared with you probably 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, you know, we have progressed significantly, but yeah, we'll certainly pick up on in terms of the report back. I'll have a good chat to Adele on that, and we'll come back.
So
excellent
through you, just in response to that, I think we were essentially saying that there's great work that's been done in this space. We can further enhance that and also tell that story and use that to connect with external parties and build on that. And one of the priorities that sits under all of this is that measurement, monitoring and reporting. So we are looking to connect with activity managers and with our procurement specialist. So we will connect in with yourself, Ken, and Adele. We've got time scheduled, I think, for the next week. The next one relates to community collaboration. As you know, an external comms strategy has been prepared and work is underway with regard to the development of a customer experience strategy. It's critical to ensure that as part of this component part, we align with those. We also recommending that prioritisation be given to build on the work that we did through the development of our Hauaki, that enhanced community participatory process. And we're of the mind that the development of the 25-34 long-term plan provides us with an opportunity to further explore that. You touched on, Liz, the reference to the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, and this council, particularly Mayor Susan, you highlighted as a priority enhancing the ways in which we engage with youth. And there is work that is underway. I understand a meeting to connect with you in the next week or so. So we see that falls within this component part. Similarly, we referenced a citizens learning program And we are of the mind that there is an opportunity to further explore this as part of the development of the 25-34 long-term plan as part of that community participatory process, but also then the messaging that we share with our community ahead of the triennial local election in October 2025. With regard to the community wellbeing program that we spoke about at our previous workshop, again, focusing on work that is already underway and how we can build on that in the first instance in this immediate term, and really utilising Joy Mickelson in her role as Economic Development Advisor as she kicks off the redevelopment of our economic wellbeing strategy and the work that she's undertaking to build and strengthen networks with our business community in particular. So, we've been approached by different business entities about how they can invest in the community by essentially in those 4 wellbeing spaces through whether it's volunteer programs and the like. So how we actually enhance that and build on that. The next area.
Could I just jump in there about the youth work? Because I did actually get a comment on the weekend about what's happened to the Waipa Youth Awards. And it was a mum who's got, geniuses for children. And but she said that they actually. No, you've no idea what these other people are like. And they really appreciate their kids getting the awards because they can put it on their CV, because these kids are in such a competitive environment to secure, places like at med school or other scholarships. It really actually helps them a lot that they can show that they've, been receiving awards and things like that, during their schooling time. Yeah.
I think, Susan, that Sally's coming to respond to that.
If I can, through the Mayor. So in terms of the youth panel, and Mayor Susan has tasked myself and my group to look at opportunities for that. We're just trying to find some time in her diary at the moment to bring that back in terms of part of that work was refreshing what the youth panel looks at, what the youth awards are, and also trying to tie in work around the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, which the Mayor is also interested in. So trying to pull that together based on work that's been done with Ahuaki around engaging youth, how we can support and promote that more. But my understanding was that there is most probably a refresh of the youth awards required, and that was what Ms. Susan has asked me to look at and look into. But connecting with our youth to understand what it is they want and what they need as well. So hold this space, and we'll be back in touch with more information imminently, because I know I'm behind on this. So thank you.
We've got a date on Wednesday. It's in my calendar. I see it there.
So just then the next component part that's in the slide is employment, and I think it's important that that work underway in the procurement area also is relevant here for employment. The comments that were made earlier, we are a facilitator, not a deliverer. So this is around looking to within our own organisational policies around employment opportunities for local residents, looking at the possibilities of internship and cadetship program. The work that Joy is undertaking in establishing those connections, particularly with anchor institutions across our community, and there are a number of large anchors, including private business organisations. The final component part on the screen there, and there are a couple of others I'd like to mention, the cluster anchor. So as you're aware, there's already work that's undertaken through CoLab and in partnership with our neighbouring councils. So we're proposing to further explore opportunities for collaboration, building on work that's already underway, and then using the development of the economic wellbeing strategy to further explore opportunities here. What's not captured on the slide is work in relation to the community assets and infrastructure component, which featured on the earlier slide. and utilisation of council-owned assets and infrastructure to provide for more affordable housing. So as you're aware, we have a housing subcommittee. We have had elected members approve a housing implementation plan, and part of that, there is a priority around exploring opportunities for the utilisation of council-owned property in partnership with others to provide opportunities for affordable housing. In fact, we can, we have one that is progressing on 1262 Cambridge Road, Te Awamutu. So we see that as being a priority also, and one that's already been touched on, which isn't a component part but underlies all, and that is the prioritisation of identifying benefits, providing for the measurement, monitoring and reporting of those. If I can, I'd just like to skip to the last slide and then come back to elected member discussion and feedback. So just in terms of next steps, what we're proposing, just in terms of capacity constraints, is that we would bring to you a formal report at that end of April meeting, seeking approval of the framework. So what you've seen in terms of that pie with the different slices representing the component parts and the detail that sits below that, with a view then to enabling myself and Joy to connect with relevant activity managers to prepare a draft work program that we would then bring back to you for approval, probably separate to that initial report. And this would have a phased approach in terms of the short term, so what's underway now and to be delivered in the next 12 months, and then a medium term followed by a long term. And happy to respond to any questions or receive your feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsty. Yeah. I'm liking the way this is heading, and we're not being too ambitious, but at the same time we're holding true to what our intention is in terms of this piece of work, and could be pretty transformative really. So any other comments from anybody or questions for Kirsty? I'm comfortable with the timeline in terms of our next steps. Oh, look at that. You've covered everything. Fantastic. No, thank you very much, Kirsty. Look forward to seeing you back with that piece of work in due course. So that brings our meeting to an end. Obviously, there is morning tea available next door, but for those who have their